Horstman. Any questions? Any questions for Representative Horstman? Hearing none, thank you, Representative Horstman, for introducing that bill. Do we have another speaker that would like to?
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris. I just didn't have my microphone on and I was failing to get your attention as a result. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Representative Harshman, I love all three of these concepts. I'm a little worried that I suspect it was a Christmas tree, that everybody loved something and wanted it in this bill. I don't know if you could do any two of them justice in the amount of time with the resources and with the group in the period of time. And it seems to me that your original intent was to look at geothermal. The School of Energy Resources is already fixed, I think, on hydrogen. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at hydrogen, but that's what they're already working on, honestly. And I don't know, one of the things they're already working on. I don't know that we gain anything by having hydrogen. It's very awkwardly placed there since it's even more unlike the other two. And then the hydropower. I guess I'd just ask you, and I'm not gonna mess with your bill. I'll be happy to support whatever you want. This is a fine idea, but I think it's weaker for having three of them instead of a focused mission on one of them, which sounded like you wanted geothermal. So I'd just like your thoughts on that.
Mr. Hirschman, would you like to address that, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think, but I think recognize this for what it is. It's kind of the beginning, of getting people together. And when you do that, these conversations where people are in the same room that maybe not, normally are in the same room, but then it sends out signals, right? What we say here matters, and what are said and what we focus on matters. And you start sending that signal that these things are important. And I think then you just never know where it can take you, and I think even the Nuclear Energy Production Task Force, I don't know that our initial deal was, to self-regulate our industry, but that was certainly an outcome of it. And that's something we learned as we dug into it. I think it's a fair point, but I think really what's the mission of this is to get us started, talk about some of these important issues that are out there and kind of maybe get us focused then. And maybe out of this comes one or two focus areas. So fair enough.
Any other questions for Representative Harshman? Any other questions? I had one. How did it pass in the House?
I'm being told here, Mr. Chairman, 55-5 on third reading. I don't have that.
Okay, good. Good. Any other questions for Representative Harshman? Speaker Harshman, Mr. Harshman. All right, thank you. Thank you, Representative Harshman, coming and introducing the bill. Is there anyone in the audience, anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on the bill? Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? There comes somebody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Randall Luthi. I'm the Chief Energy Advisor for Governor Gordon. Always a pleasure to come before a legislative committee. So senators, thank you for this opportunity. Let me say right off the bat, the governor is very supportive of this bill. The reason why I'm here today is just to talk about some of the things that Speaker Harshman mentioned. And also with me attending virtually is the Wyoming State Geologist, Aaron Campbell, as well as Director of Wyoming Water Development Office, Brandon Gebhardt. We are committed to giving you the best product we can. As you know, the bill does assign some administrative duties to the Wyoming State Geologist in her office. Both of these offices have followed the governor's recommendations, and which you all have somewhat supported so far on reductions in numbers. So the concern was, in order to do the best job possible, one, we might want to be asking the task force members, should this bill move forward, just how deep of a dive you want to go on this. Certainly a 30,000 foot level is one way to look at it. But certainly, and I don't mean to be somewhat punished, but the further underground you go, the more in-depth this study will have to be. So that was our recommendation, that we just extend the timeout and that it be an initial report and then extend the timeout for the final report. And you'd probably need to extend the task force as well. So again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we're in support. We just want to make sure we can give you the best possible outcome that you're seeking for. And should you have questions for either Ms. Campbell or Mr. Gephardt, please just ask away. How's that for dodging hard questions?
Well done. Well done. Well done, Mr. Dodger.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
this is Chris.
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Randall, same question. And again, there's almost no overlap between these three technologies. They're surprisingly diverse, other than the fact that 2 of the 3 contain hydro. That's almost the end of the list of overlap. So it's really going to be 3 reports, although I assume they'll be bound into 1 report with 3 distinct chapters. Does the governor want all 3 of these at one time?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I have to say we kind of leave that. I would be proposed to leave that to the legislature, but part of the concern and doing a quality job were when the other 2 elements were added to the bill.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Other questions? Other questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Luthi. Thank you for your presentation. Does Aaron or Brandon have anything to add with that, with online? Looks like they might. Brandon, you're ready to go. You got your microphone on. You want to go ahead?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Good afternoon. Brandon Gilbert, Director of Water Development. I was just standing by in case there are any questions for me. I think it's a good task force, but I think Mr. Luthi identified our concerns, and so I just stand by for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Gebhardt? Any questions? I thought your backdrop would be a river or a fountain or something, with being in charge of water.
Mr. Chairman, my hope is to make this background behind me green with water.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Campbell, are you ready for?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just echo Randall Luthi's comments that we are committed to providing the very best product to the state, and we will do what we need to do to provide that product to the state. And I'm here for any questions that people might have.
All right, good. Any questions for Ms. Campbell? Any questions? I see some movement there. Is that a question? Guess not. No questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Campbell. Thank you for your support of this project. Any other input on in person or on the, Brianna, is there anybody else on the web?
Mr. Chairman, we've got another public speaker.
Okay. Another one in person?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good.
Now, do I need to press a button to make the? Okay. I'm a citizen of Wyoming, and I have a graduate degree, master's degree in architecture.
Would you please state your name first?
My name is Michael Burnett. As I mentioned, I have a graduate degree in architecture, and fortunately, I went to a school that allowed me to pick my thesis. And my thesis actually was, as energy modalities change in our lifetimes, how will that affect the built environment? So this was 14 years ago, but I had to do, as you would imagine, a complete deep dive, tons of research on what our energy window looks like in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And during the course of that, I became immediately aware of the country of Iceland that generates about 30%, 35% of its power from geothermal electric power plants. They have enough shallow magma chambers that you drill down, 1,000 feet and you're close to one of the chambers, you can pull water out of there at 700 degrees. And they use that, bring it to the surface, it flashes to steam, put it through turbines. And then, as was mentioned, after that, they put it in hot springs and they build a little resort for the hot springs. You got a spa, get your cafe latte, you get your massage, and 750,000 people visit this place in Iceland that has that spa. So they have a hotel and restaurant. So they're pulling, I don't know, $5-10 million just off of not the electricity, but just the tourist factor. As we get going here, I think the most important thing that I can bring up to put this in context is this is all hinging on Article 16, Section 10 of the Constitution, which says the legislature shall have the power to provide for the construction or improvement in whole or in part of any works designed, constructed, or operated for the purposes of conservation or utilization of water, either directly or by extending aid to legal subdivisions of the state of Wyoming, duly organized irrigation, drainage, soil conservation, public irrigation, and power districts. So the Constitution lets me know that the state of Wyoming can fund in whole or in part any development that is basically water derived. So what that opens up to us is hydroelectric, which is dams on rivers, water to steam via natural gas, water to steam via hot bedrock rock, and as well, hydrogen. Hydrogen can be produced from natural gas, but the hydrogen that I think we're wanting to focus on, and of which there has been considerable movement in the last 2 to 3 years in hydrogen, in electrolysis of water. So again, that's one more thing that can be done with Wyoming's water. And so, when I first read this, it was just startling to me that, because I'd started some of the research knowing that our state might need some economic, something, a different angle, different strategy. So anyway, that's water. Wyoming ranks 7th in all the states out of hydroelectric potential. We have 12 hydroelectric dams in Wyoming. They're all owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. They were all built under a beneficiary pays model. So Wyoming commissions, committees, counties, towns, city, and the state of Wyoming have paid off all 12 hydroelectric dams in Wyoming. The federal government continues to own them through the Bureau of Reclamation, and they operate, staff, maintain, and they also derive the benefit from. Wyoming's ranked 4th for natural gas. Wyoming ranks 9th for geothermal potential. Wyoming's quantified potential for geothermal is 1,070,079 gigawatt hours. And that's from the Environment and Climate Justice Program, Just Energy Policies and Practices. Author was Patterson in 2014. So every hour, on the hour, we can generate slightly over 1 million gigawatts. That's our theoretical maximum. Of course, we'd never achieve our theoretical maximum, but we'd be able to achieve 30 or 40%. When we're talking about this stuff, number one, if I am generating steam by pumping water down into hot rock and then back up into a turbine. How different is that if I am taking water and now my mechanism of heat is natural gas? The workhorse that's being employed here is water, the phase change properties of water. If we were using ethane or methane, we'd have to go down to 150 degrees below zero, something like that, before it turns into a liquid. And then we'd have to go minus 200 degrees and more for it to turn into a solid. So we're using the distinct properties of water. There's four energy sources we're looking at: hydroelectric, dams on rivers. Number 2 is water to steam via natural gas. Number 3 is geothermal. And number 4 is hydrogen. I think they fit together as a family very well because they're all water-based. The hydrogen we'd be looking at would be electrolyzing hydrogen out of water. Now, 3 out of the 4 are considered renewable energy sources. So hydroelectric dams on rivers is considered a renewable energy source. Geothermal electric energy is considered a renewable energy source. Hydrogen by itself is not necessarily considered a renewable energy, but if you switch a natural gas fired power plant to burn hydrogen instead of natural gas, then that power plant would be a renewable energy. And the thing to point out here is that you can make almost as much, if not more money, on selling renewable energy certificates. Our good friend Anschutz, our neighbor to the south, spent $7 to $8 billion on the Chokecherry Sierra Madre wind farm, which, for argument's sake, let's just say it's roughly 100 megawatts. I don't know what it's going to be in the end, but most power plants try to get to about 100 megawatt sweet spot. And he's in the western region. So Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, all the way to the Pacific Ocean is the western region. If he had put his electricity to the Wyoming grid, he would be able to sell renewable energy certificates to anybody in the western region for $25 per 1 megawatt hour. But because he built the Trans-West Express for $3 billion and he's bringing his electricity to California where it joins the grid, he can sell what's called a bundled renewable energy certificate, which goes for $300 for 1 megawatt hour. And we said he was at a 100 megawatt plant. He's making $30,000 an hour, every hour, all day, all night, all week, all month, and all year. So the same thing applies here to us and the potential revenues for the state of Wyoming, whether we develop this in whole or in part. Our two closest markets are Utah and Colorado and Denver, really. I mean, Denver has become the size of the Phoenix metro area. Denver goes from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins. Salt Lake City is also becoming a giant metroplex. The demand for electricity is going through the roof. Now we can sell renewable energy certificates bundled to Utah or Colorado more in the neighborhood of $100 per 1 megawatt hour or $150 per megawatt hour, which means our 100 megawatt plant would be making 10 grand an hour, every hour, all night long, all year long. Or if we get a little bit better price and we get $150 per renewable energy certificate, we're making $15,000 an hour, every hour, all night long, all year long. So really, I think, we've shown that tourism can tie into it. Renewable energy certificates can tie into it. Wyoming has been very smart. We never set a renewable energy portfolio for ourselves, thank God. But 33 states have set renewable energy portfolio standards, and they have to buy a huge quantity of them. And that's their way of subsidizing the move towards renewables, but it's also their way of really providing impetus to the power players in their state that they need to move in that direction. I've provided everybody a bullet points, and then it's also a revenue model. On the first page is bullet points. And of course, again, this all centers around that Article 16, Section 10 of the Constitution. The bottom point I have yet to mention, the bottom point, I have a report by Goldman Sachs that is actually in your copy of this book that anticipates that 20% of the primary energy consumption in the United States by 2050 will be hydrogen. That will slowly move from a carbon-based society to a hydrogen-based society. On the back page of your handout, I have the revenue model. In 3 years, 4 months, the goal would be to achieve 1 hydroelectric power plant, 6 water to steam via natural gas power plants, 6 geothermal electric power plants, and 1 hydrogen production facility with a potential aggregate annual revenue of 100 million. 6 years, 8 months from now, we'd be looking to achieve a total of 2 hydroelectric power plants, 12 water to steam via natural gas plants, 12 geothermal electric power plants, and 2 hydrogen production plants with a potential annual aggregate revenue of 500 million to the state of Wyoming, depending on how we structure the ownership shares, whether it was fully owned or in partnership. And at the end, 9 years, 12 months, another way of saying 10 years down the road, we would have achieved 3 hydroelectric power plants, 18 water to steam power plants, natural gas, 18 geothermal electric power plants, and 3 hydrogen production plants, which would have a minimum potential annual aggregate revenue of $1 billion to the state of Wyoming, depending on how that was structured. Of course, that's a forward-looking statement. Any forward-looking statement concerning economics is, of course, carries its own risks, and I think we all realize that it's a guesstimate. The other thing I would like to say, and I'd like to point out to people, because I myself am right-leaning, and when I started getting into this information and I found out that the state of Wyoming could actually own in whole or in part power plants, I thought, well, I'm not sure how that squares with my own political ideology. But the more I found out, the more I came around. And the thing that really put this all into context for me is on the back page here of your handout, there's only one state in 50 states that owns the entire electric operation in their state, from production to distribution to metering. And that's our Republican neighbor to the east, Nebraska. So I think there is a lot of potential for us. I think having a task force able to look into the different elements of this. I've done all of this work at night and on the weekends. I spent my own money printing and binding all this stuff off as a citizen. I've provided each of you with a quick primer. All the information in here is quite digestible. It covers the revenue model, hydroelectric power plants, water to steam with natural gas, geothermal, and hydrogen production. The only thing I would say about hydroelectric power plants is In Wyoming, we've only built up about 40% of our potential for hydroelectric dams. If we do hydroelectric dams, they need to be segregated, they need to be off, away, they need to be in a place that's not going to affect tourism, and it needs to be done in a way that it doesn't affect brown, rainbow, or cutthroat trout. We do not in any way want to infringe upon fly fishing, our hunters and our fishermen. And I think that was a bit of a long-winded introduction. So thank you for your patience. And at this point, I'd be open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. That was a little bit long-winded there, but a big subject and a lot of stuff to discuss. Is there any questions for Mr. Burnett? Any questions for Mr. Burnett? Thank you for your research and the booklet that you gave us.
Senator Cooper would like to say something.
Okay, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see a lot of potential for the whole concept and the task force. I got some concerns with Mr. Burnett. Do you think what you're proposing here is, for lack of a better word, socialized energy?
My answer to that would be that
Burnett, would you like to answer that?
yes,
Would you like to answer that, Mr. Burnett?
yes. My answer to that would be that the founders of our state constitution, every state constitution is different, and they all have different points. I would say that I would not consider it socialization of energy simply because it's straight out of our constitution and it stays within the parameters of our constitution. I also think that having a public-private partnership, which is also discussed in the book that I gave out to people, in many ways is a very desirable option to move. Especially if we partner with private industry, we would obviously try to retain 51% or more ownership share, but we can involve private industry and we can utilize private industry where they're the best, where they're the strongest. So for example, state of Wyoming potentially could build and construct, and then we'd have a private partner that does staffing, operations, and maintenance. Public-private partnerships could be involved in the construction of works. So I think between public-private partnerships and staying within the parameters of our Constitution, I do not believe this to be socialized energy. And again, I think public-private partnerships is a big part of that.
Follow up, Senator Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burnett, on your revenue model, did you take into any consideration the loss of revenues, loss of jobs, the impact on our coal industry and our natural gas industry in your model?
I did, and I'd like to read something that I wrote that is specifically response to your question. You can give me a minute to find it here. Okay.
Well, that's okay, Mr. Burnett, if it's in the book.
Yeah, I'm right. Here it is.
Oh, okay.
All righty. This is a unique period in the energy business in Wyoming. Ethics of power production and the release of CO2 is beyond the scope of this work. For our purposes, we are simply driven solely and only by strategies to make the state of Wyoming as much annual revenue as possible and to provide this quantity of revenue well into the future. Wyoming is blessed by the hand of Providence with very large natural gas formations, including the Niobrara gas play and the Great Green River gas play. Simply by switching from a coal-fired plant to a natural gas-fired plant, you have a 50% immediate reduction in CO2. As the state can own in full or in partnership, especially 51% majority status, certain parameters can be set in the development of natural gas plants. It would be a recommendation that any displaced coal worker would get first crack at employment opportunities in future potential natural gas plants here in Wyoming.
All right, follow up, Representative Cooper. Follow up.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr. Burnett? Any other questions? All right.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman, you
yeah.
had one more virtual public comment from Mr. Philip Shield.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for your book. We look forward to working with this in the future. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Shield on the video. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Philip Shale. I'm a Hot Springs County Commissioner living in Thermopolis. My comments today would just be to speak in favor of the study and to encourage membership participation specifically from Hot Springs County. Obviously, our county is named for geothermal potential and I just want to speak in favor of having representation from our county be part of the task force. I understand the way that I understand the bill is there will be a lot of appointments of state employees and there is potential for 2 members at large. The governor gets to appoint 1 and so does the president of the Senate in conjunction with the Speaker of the House. We're excited in Hot Springs County to see legislation like this. Economic diversification has been a long, popular preaching from the entire state. I think that there is huge potential of geothermal production. This task force is a good idea. I just wanted to speak in favor.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shield. Is there any questions for Mr. Shield? Any questions for Mr. Shield? I have one, Mr. Shield. Are you thinking a citizen from Thermopolis or Hot Springs County, or are you thinking of a representative or a senator or a commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have in my mind a specific citizen that has been doing some specific work on geothermal activity as part of the local Natural Resources Planning Commission. Our local NRPC had done some work in 2 or 3 years ago in discovering potential legislative changes that might need to be made in order for some production. The environmental protection of our resources, and came up with a lot of great ideas. There is a member of that NRPC board that comes to my mind that would do a really good job at representing not only this specific geothermal resource abundant in Hot Springs County, but is also a lady of great economic development within our community here. That individual, I think, would serve this task force well. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can work her name in. Any other questions for Mr. Shield?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Cooper.
I'd like to speak on behalf of Mr. Shield there just for a second. I know the candidate he's talking about, I think when it comes to that point, I'd sure like to see the name considered if we can make it happen. But in the meantime, I think we need to move forward with this task force. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shield. Thank you for taking the time out there in your car there.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anybody else that's going to present? Rihanna, do we have anybody else in the queue?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. If not, we'll close public comment and committee. What is your pleasure? Who was that? Was that
Rockcliffe.
Rockcliffe?
Yep.
And who seconded it?
Wasserberger.
Wasserberger. All right. Any changes or deletions or additions? I think there was a couple from the governor's office that I would propose we do as a committee of the whole rather than try to do it today. We're kind of running out of time. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so
Wasserberger.
Representative Harshman, did you think it would be appropriate to take out the language that the House added?
So people can hear you. Mr. Chairman, I think the language is good where it's at. I really do. I think we're in good shape, and I think this, we can get the exact language from the executive branch on the timing of the reports for committee of the whole, if you'd like, what the chairman suggests.
Other questions? Senator Wasserberger?
More questions, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Representative Harshman, if you could get that information for us for a committee of the whole amendment, that would be good. Any other questions? Other questions? Seeing none, sensing you're ready to vote. All in favor of House Bill 67, geothermal and hydro, signify by saying aye. Oh, no, we have to vote on it.
Roll call, Mr. Chairman.
We have to do a roll call on this one, don't we?
It's worth it.
Yeah, well worth it. Mike, can you do a roll call for us, please?
Yes, sir. This is for House Bill 67 engrossed. Senator Bateman. Aye. Senator Cooper.
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye. And who wants to carry this bill on the floor?
I'll carry it, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wasserberger, okay.
Members?
Yes. Is there anybody representing Senate File 141? Boner case, Guru, Hicks, Nethercott, Schuler?
There's nobody in person regarding that bill, sir. I'm not sure anyone.
Is there anyone wanting to represent House Bill 10? COVID-19?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that is a committee bill.
Okay. I don't have the list of the people here on my list. Do you want to present it? Do you want to bring it forth?
I'll go through it. Yeah, we've seen this. This is the third time, I think. All right, so essentially, we're talking about, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about CARES Act money, emergency expenses of government related to business relief. We've talked about that with several different bills this session, and we started that with our special session, was it last year in May? At any rate, it starts out on the bill with section 1, line 10. It talks about definitions for the council. And then it goes to eligible businesses. Working through the bill, this was it's for a privately owned business. Paid not less than $1 million in taxes, $10 million in gross payroll, has its principal operations located in Wyoming. March 31st, 2020, employed in Wyoming, not less than 100 full-time employees. So we worked this in the interim, and I think this was kind of the large business package from the CARE Act money. And so it just goes on from there. I think we've all seen this bill. And I think we should know the bill. Mr. Chairman, I believe that's about all I need to say.
Yeah, good intro. We had the small business one, and in the interim, we did this large business one, which would help some of our larger businesses in Wyoming. Obviously, there is some limitations, or not less than 100, but and then the taxes that they pay and that kind of stuff is written into the bill also. So, any questions on House Bill 10? Any questions on House Bill 10? Is there anyone that wants to testify on House Bill 10? No large businesses want to testify?
Mr. Chairman, this is
Mr.
Chris.
Chairman,
Yes. Senator Rothfuss.
we have two young ladies here from Sheridan County. I think they'd like to speak.
He probably has
Oh.
thoughts on it.
They're very cute, Mr. Chairman. They look like Senator Bateman.
They're large. I think they're large business owner and operators, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Chairman, I did have a couple of thoughts. This was one of the interim bills that I didn't support, and I actually wouldn't feel particularly comfortable working through it or voting on it unless we had Representative Burkhart here to talk with us about it and see if any of the concerns were addressed. I'm surprised he's not here. He was the advocate for this. I don't know if you'd be amenable. This is a House bill. We're in no hurry. I don't know if you'd be amenable to tabling this and seeing if they just missed it, because I would expect Representative Burkhart and Chairman Greer, one or both of them, to be here to talk about this. Certainly at least Representative Burkhart. And we don't have a lot of time either. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I'd like to know what they changed. I'd like to know what the implications are for under current CARES legislation with the extension and with the American Recovery Act, whether this was amended in a way that would allow for that. So even though this was an interim bill, we passed it kind of last minute, and it was one that really I don't think was unanimous on the committee. I know I was against it.
I will consider that, and we could look at it on Friday, and we can make sure that Representative Burkhart is there. First, we're going to hear from Mr. Detai. He's taken the time to put his football picture up on the wall. Mr. Detai, you want to
Mr. Chairman, can the committee hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Travis Detai with the Wyoming Mining Association. And I will certainly come back when the committee takes it up again, when Representative Burkhart can speak to this. But just in general, we support the bill. The Mining Association and my member companies do. And I'll just hit my couple points here and then be prepared to come back. First of all, we want to thank the committee, the Joint Minerals Committee, for their work on the business relief programs. When we first started this exercise last year, the legislature rightly focused the relief on Main Street and small businesses. And my member companies advocated for that these businesses receive prioritization. Operations in Wyoming have been anything but normal in the past year. Our coal had a dreadful year. Our production was down about over 31 million tons from the previous year. On the Trona side, directly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, was down about 41% last year. And this was largely due to closures in other states impacting the supply chain, including glass manufacturers, the auto industry, and et cetera. And the industry, the larger companies, whether it be coal or whether it be Trona, saw a significant increase in expenses to help protect the workforce. And this was protective equipment, social distancing protocols that impacted shift work and flexible shift schedules, busing. This all drove costs up. So In short, I would just say that we're supportive of House Bill 10 as sort of a second bucket if there is some of that federal CARES money still available. And again, we did have some of our smaller operators took advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. Some of our larger operators took advantage of the mitigation fund through the state. That was all very helpful. But some of the larger employers, they weren't eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. And, a lot of them, with the programs that were out there, some of them didn't take advantage of any of them. And, I guess we see this as if there's some money left over, for some of the larger companies to have an opportunity to apply, we would certainly support that.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Detai? Questions for Mr. Detai? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Detai, and do make it back on Friday, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go Pokes.
Okay, all right. All right, if there be no objection, we will postpone House Bill 10 and Senate File 141 till Friday and hear that then and make sure that we have some speakers for those bills.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you. Senate File 141 is a Senate file. I think today may be the last day to have Senate files come out of committee. I could be wrong.
I thought it was Friday.
Do we know?
I can double
should get
check,
that
but it's-
right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pulling up the schedule right now, and I think, let me look, it's Friday. Last days for bills to be reported out of committee and House of Origin. So that's Friday, March 19th.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't want to kill their bill because we didn't have the calendar right. Thank you.
All right. All right. No objections then? No objections? So be it. We'll do that. So we'll see you on Friday, same room, same time. Thank you. Thank you, committee. We are adjourned. Thank you.